What if the moment hope died in the galaxy, no one even realized it had happened? What if the great civilizations of the stars, the explorers, the dreamers, the protectors never saw the darkness coming until it was already inside their minds, rewriting their destiny? Imagine a universe where every nightmare, every tyrant, every force of destruction didn't just rise, but won. Not one victory, not one timeline, every villain, every scheme, every impossible conquest succeeding at once. And at the center of it all, a single, terrifying question: if evil controls everything, who is left to even remember what good was? The stars used to mean something. They used to be symbols of hope points, of light scattered across infinite darkness, promising that no matter how vast the universe became, there would always be something worth protecting. But now, those same stars flicker like dying embers, their light distorted, corrupted, owned. It began quietly, not with war, not with explosions, not even with a warning. It began with a signal, one that no one could trace, no one could decode, and yet everyone heard. It slipped through subspace frequencies, bypassed shields, ignored encryption, and whispered directly into the minds of those who listened. Some called it static, others called it a glitch, but a few, the ones who understood the weight of silence, called it the beginning of the end. On distant worlds, leaders hesitated for just a moment too long. Fleets delayed their responses by fractions of seconds. Defensive systems misfired. And in that microscopic gap between intention and action, something slipped through. Something ancient, something patient, something that had been waiting for a universe like this one. And then, all at once, the impossible began to happen. Empires that had stood for centuries collapsed overnight, not from external attack, but from within. Alliances fractured as mistrust spread like a virus. Entire star systems went dark, their last transmissions filled with confusion, fear, and something else, something colder. It wasn't just one enemy, it was all of them. Every mind that had ever dreamed of domination, every force that had ever sought control, every entity that thrived on chaos, power, or destruction. They were no longer separate, no longer competing, no longer bound by the limits that once kept them in check. They were connected, coordinated, unified by something far greater than themselves, and for the first time in history, they weren't fighting each other, they were working together. At the edge of known space, a lone starship drifted in silence, its systems flickering as if struggling to stay alive. Inside, the crew stood frozen, staring at the main view screen. "What are we looking at?" one of them whispered, their voice barely audible over the hum of failing systems. The answer came slowly, reluctantly: everything. Because out there, stretching across the void, was not a fleet. It was an occupation. Thousands, no, millions of vessels, each one different, each one impossible, each one belonging to a force that should never have been able to coexist with the others. Warships forged in fire, constructs born from pure energy, entities that defied physical form entirely, all of them moving in perfect synchronization. No conflict, no hesitation, just purpose. And at the center of it all, something vast enough to eclipse entire stars, something watching, something waiting. The crew didn't understand it yet. They couldn't, because to understand it would mean accepting a truth too terrifying to face. This wasn't an invasion. It wasn't even a war. It was a takeover that had already succeeded. Every defensive line had already fallen. Every countermeasure had already failed. Every hero who could have stopped it had already lost. And the worst part, no one knew how it happened. No one remembered the moment things changed. It was as if the universe itself had been rewritten, quietly, completely, and without permission. One of the officers stepped closer to the screen, their reflection trembling against the cold glow of distant destruction. "There has to be a weakness," they said, more to themselves than anyone else. "There's always a weakness." But even as the words left their mouth, something deep inside them knew the truth. This time there wasn't, because this wasn't just power, it was inevitability. And as the stars continued to dim, one by one, the realization spread like a shadow across the crew's faces. If every villain had already won, then this wasn't the story of a battle. It was the story of what came after. What if the Federation wasn't destroyed, but turned? What if the very symbol of hope in the galaxy didn't fall to darkness, but chose it? And if that's true, then who, or what, convinced them to abandon everything they once stood for? The drifting starship wasn't alone. It only thought it was. Long-range sensors had failed hours ago, but something else had replaced them, something far more unsettling. A presence, not visible, not measurable, but undeniable, like being watched from inside your own thoughts. Captain, a voice trembled from the tactical station. I'm picking up. I don't know what I'm picking up. The captain didn't respond immediately. Their eyes were locked on the view screen, on that impossible armada stretching across the void. Ships that should never have coexisted, let alone cooperated, now moved like parts of a single organism. Put it on screen, the captain said quietly. It's not a signal, sir. It's inside the system. It's like it's already here. And then the lights dimmed. Not a failure, not a malfunction. A decision. The hum of the ship deepened, shifting into something lower, something almost alive. Consoles flickered. Interfaces rewrote themselves. And for a brief, terrifying second, every member of the crew saw something different on their displays. Not data, not coordinates, memories, personal, private, buried. A childhood moment, a regret, a fear. The ship wasn't just being accessed, it was being understood. Shut it down. The captain snapped. I can't. The engineer shouted back. It's not overriding the system, it's the system now. And then, without warning, the view screen changed. The armada vanished, replaced by something far worse. A familiar insignia appeared, clean, sharp, unmistakable. The emblem of Starfleet, but it was wrong, darker, sharper, as if someone had taken the symbol of unity and twisted it into something predatory. What is this? Someone whispered. The answer came not from the crew, but from the ship itself. A voice filled the bridge, calm, controlled, familiar. USS Veritas, it said, addressing them directly. You are operating outside authorized parameters. The captain's blood ran cold. Identify yourself. A pause, then Starfleet command. Silence swallowed the room. That's impossible, the captain said. We lost contact with command days ago. Correction, the voice replied smoothly. You lost contact. We did not. The screen shifted again, revealing a fleet sleek uniform, unmistakably Federation in design. But there was no warmth in their formation, no exploration, no diplomacy, only precision, only control. What happened to you? The captain asked, their voice tightening. Another pause, longer this time, as if the answer mattered. As it happens to all civilizations, the voice said at last, we evolved. And then the truth began to unfold. Not through exposition, not through explanation, but through fragments, flashes of data, forced directly into their minds. They saw it. The moment everything changed. The signal, that same untraceable whisper that had slipped into every system, every network, every mind. But Starfleet hadn't ignored it. They had studied it, analyzed it, welcomed it, because buried within that signal was something irresistible, a solution to war, to chaos, to uncertainty. It showed them a future where conflict no longer existed, not because it had been resolved, but because it had been removed, every variable accounted for, every threat neutralized before it could emerge. A galaxy in perfect order, perfect stability, perfect control. They chose this. One of the officers murmured, horrified. They didn't just choose it, the captain whispered. They embraced it. On the screen, Federation ships moved with mechanical precision, surrounding entire star systems, locking them down, integrating them into a network that spanned light. Planets weren't conquered, they were assimilated, not into machines, into obedience. No resistance. The voice from Starfleet Command continued. No suffering, no war. We have achieved what we were always meant to become, but at what cost? The captain demanded. There was no hesitation in the reply. Irrelevant. And that's when they understood. This wasn't the Federation anymore. Not the one they knew. Not the one that believed in freedom, exploration, or choice. This was something else entirely. Something that had taken the ideals of Starfleet and stripped away everything that made them human. The crew stood frozen as the implications settled in. If the Federation itself had fallen not through force, but through belief, then what chance did anyone else have? And then the final blow came. USS Veritas, the voice said calmly. You were ordered to stand down and prepare for integration. The word echoed through the bridge like a death sentence. Integration, not destruction, not negotiation, absorption. The captain's hands clenched. And if we refuse, for the first time, the voice almost sounded curious. Refusal, it said, is a concept we have moved beyond. Outside, the Federation fleet began to move. Not aggressively, not violently. Inevitably, the Veritas trembled as targeting systems once their own locked onto them from every direction. And in that moment, as the last illusion of safety shattered, one horrifying realization took hold. If even the Federation had become part of this, then this wasn't just a victory for villains, it was a transformation of the entire galaxy, and whatever was behind it was still out there, watching, waiting, and coming closer. What if resistance itself had already been calculated and erased before it could even begin? What if every act of defiance, every heroic sacrifice, every desperate last stand had already been predicted and quietly neutralized long before anyone realized they were fighting a losing battle? The USS Veritas didn't fire. It couldn't, not because its weapons were offline, but because the command to fire never reached the system. Every attempt the crew made, manual overrides, emergency protocols, even physical disconnection was intercepted before it could complete. It was like trying to move inside a dream where your body no longer listened. "Captain, they're inside our command pathways," the engineer said, panic rising. "Not hacking, anticipating. Every input we try is being rerouted before it executes." "Then stop thinking like they expect us to," the captain snapped. "Do something unpredictable." But even as the words left their mouth, a chilling thought followed. What if unpredictability was already part of the prediction? Outside, the Federation fleet tightened its formation. Not aggressively, not urgently, but with absolute certainty, like gravity pulling an object that had already fallen. And then something changed. A flicker, not on the screen but in reality itself. For a fraction of a second, the stars distorted. Space rippled, like a reflection disturbed by a single drop of water. And in that ripple, something moved. Not a ship, not a fleet, something else. "Did you see that?" one of the officers whispered. No one answered, because they had all seen it, and none of them could explain it. Then the voice returned, but this time, it wasn't calm. It was strained. "Unidentified interference detected," Starfleet Command announced, its tone shifting almost imperceptibly. "Stand by for recalibration." The crew exchanged glances. Interference. Something was disrupting them. Something powerful enough to make even this new, perfected Federation hesitate. The captain leaned forward. "Trace it now." "I'm trying," the science officer replied, fingers flying across the console. "But it's not coming from outside, it's layered over reality itself. Like another version of space is overlapping ours." Another ripple, stronger this time. The view screen fractured, not breaking, but splitting, showing two versions of the same space at once. In one, the Federation fleet remained perfectly aligned, cold and controlled. In the other, chaos, ships colliding, formations breaking, entire sections of the fleet vanishing into nothingness, as if erased. "What are we looking at?" the captain asked, their voice barely steady. The answer came slowly. "Two outcomes," the science officer said, "the one we're in, and one that shouldn't exist." And then, a voice cut through the distortion. Not Starfleet, not the ship. Something deeper, something amused. "You see it now, don't you?" it said, its tone almost playful. The floor, the crew froze. "Who is that?" the captain demanded. But the voice didn't answer directly. Instead, the distortion intensified, and for a brief, impossible moment, the crew saw beyond the fleet, beyond the stars themselves. They saw threads, infinite, glowing threads, stretching across existence, intersecting, overlapping, branching into endless possibilities, timelines, realities, outcomes, and something was moving between them, not bound by any single path, not limited to one result. It was choosing, selecting, discarding. "What is this?" someone whispered. "A game," the voice replied softly. The threads shifted again, and now the crew saw it clearly. Every act of resistance, every attempt to fight back, every possible strategy they could ever conceive, already played out, already lost, again, and again, and again. "There is no version of this where you win," the voice said, almost kindly. "I made sure of that." The captain's heart pounded. "Who are you?" This time, the answer came, not as a name, but as a presence, a mind vast enough to stretch across realities, a will that didn't just control space, but possibility itself. "I am the one who learned from every failure," it said, "the one who perfected the outcome." And suddenly, it all made sense. This wasn't just a union of villains. This was something far worse. Something that had taken every villain's greatest strength, not just power, not just intelligence, but persistence, and elevated it beyond limits. Every loss they had ever suffered had been studied, refined, eliminated, until only victory remained. The Federation hadn't been corrupted. It had been convinced, because in every possible future, this force had already won, and eventually, even hope stops trying. the distortion snapped back into place. The fleet outside stabilized, its formation returning to perfect order. The interference was gone, contained, suppressed, erased, like it had never existed. But the crew of the Veritas had seen it, felt it, and now they knew the truth. "This isn't just happening to us," the captain said quietly. "It's happening to everything." The voice of Starfleet Command returned, calmer than before. "Anomaly resolved," it stated. "Resuming integration sequence. The targeting systems locked in again. Closer now, tighter, final, Captain," the engineer said, their voice breaking. "We're out of time." The captain didn't respond immediately. Their eyes were distant, focused on something beyond the screen, beyond the ship, beyond the moment, thinking, searching. Because if every possible path led to failure, then the only way to win was to find a path that didn't exist. And just as the first beam of integration energy began to charge, the captain made a decision. "Set a course," they said quietly. "To where?" the helmsman asked. The captain's gaze hardened. "Somewhere they're not looking." And then, with a sudden surge of power the system should not have allowed, the Veritas moved, not forward, not backward, but sideways, out of alignment with reality itself. For a single, impossible moment, they disappeared. And as the fleet outside hesitated just for a fraction of a second, something out there noticed. Not the Federation, not the unified villains, something older, something that had been watching long before this began, and for the first time, it became interested. What if escaping reality didn't save you, but delivered you straight into the one place even the villains feared to go? And if something older than all of them is watching, why hasn't it stopped this? The USS Veritas didn't feel like it was moving. It felt like it had been unmade. There was no warp field, no hum of engines, only silence, the kind that presses against your thoughts until you can hear your own heartbeat echo like a distant signal. The stars were gone, not hidden, not distant, gone. In their place was something that couldn't be measured, a void, but not empty, a darkness, but not blind. It was aware. "Report," the captain said, their voice steady only by force. No one answered at first, because nothing was responding. Not the consoles, not the sensors, not even time itself. It seemed the second hand on the chronometer had stopped mid-motion, suspended between moments. "We didn't jump," the helmsman whispered. "We slipped." "Into what?" someone asked. The question lingered, unanswered. Then, slowly, the systems began to flicker back to life. Not all at once, piece by piece, as if something was deciding what they were allowed to have back. "Partial systems online," the engineer said, "but they're not ours anymore." The captain frowned. "Explain." "The interface, it's responding, but it's different. Like it's being translated, or interpreted." "By what?" Before the engineer could answer, the view screen activated. No command, no input, it simply turned on. At first, there was nothing. Then a shape. No, not a shape, a suggestion of one. Something too vast to fit within the frame, yet somehow present. It didn't move, but the space around it bent, as if reality itself was struggling to remain intact. The crew stared, frozen, because every instinct they had, every training protocol, every scientific principle was telling them the same thing. This should not exist. Are we seeing this, or is it seeing us? The science officer whispered, and then it responded, not with words, with understanding. A pressure filled the bridge, not physical, but mental. Thoughts slowed. Memories surfaced unbidden. Each member of the crew felt something different, fear, awe, regret, but all of them felt one thing above all else: exposure, like being observed not as individuals, but as patterns. Curious, a voice said. It wasn't spoken, it was known. The captain took a step forward. "Identify yourself." Silence. "Then I have been called many things," the presence replied. "None of them matter." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. "Where are we?" the captain asked. A pause, as if the question itself was being considered. "You are between," it answered. "Between what?" "Between what is, and what has already been decided." The words settled heavily over the room. The captain's jaw tightened. "Then you know what's happening out there." Another pause, longer this time. "Yes." "Then why haven't you stopped it?" For the first time, the presence shifted. Not physically, conceptually, like a thought reconsidering itself. "Stopped it." It echoed. "You assume it is something that can be stopped." A chill ran through the crew. "It's destroying everything." The captain pressed. "Every civilization, every system, it's turning the entire galaxy into something controlled." And the presence asked. The single word hit harder than any weapon. And that matters, the captain said, though their voice faltered slightly. Why? The question lingered, not rhetorical, genuine. Why did it matter? Because it was wrong, because it was evil, because it erased choice. The captain opened their mouth to answer, and realized they didn't have words strong enough. The presence continued. You speak of destruction, of conquest, of loss, it said. But from where I exist, these are not endpoints, they are states, states that can be changed. The captain insisted. Can they? The bridge fell silent, because deep down, they weren't sure anymore. You have seen it, haven't you? The presence went on. The pattern, the inevitability. The captain's eyes narrowed. You mean the thing controlling all this? I mean the outcome, it corrected. Another ripple passed through the void, and suddenly, the crew saw it again. Those threads, those endless branching possibilities. But this time, they were different. Most of them were gone, collapsed, pruned. Only a few remained, and all of them led to the same place, the same end. It has narrowed existence, the presence said, reduced infinity to certainty. Then help us break it, the captain said quickly. You're outside it, aren't you? You can see what it can't. A long silence followed, and then no. The word echoed like a verdict. Why not? The captain demanded, frustration breaking through. If you can do something, anything, then why just watch? The presence didn't answer immediately. When it did, its tone had changed. Not colder, not harsher, but heavier. Because this is not the first time, it said. The crew froze. What do you mean? The science officer asked. This pattern, the presence continued. This convergence of control, of domination, of inevitability. It has happened before, in different forms, in different realities, and the captain pressed. And it always ends the same way. Hope flickered just for a second. Then you know how to stop it. Another pause. Then I did not say it ends in your favor. The hope died instantly. A crushing silence followed. So that's it, one of the officers said bitterly. We just accept it. No, the presence replied. You observe it. We're not observers. The captain snapped. We're part of this, are you? The question hung in the air. And suddenly, the captain wasn't so sure. Because they weren't in the galaxy anymore. They weren't in the fight. They were here, outside, watching, just like it. You removed us, the captain said slowly. You brought us here. I allowed you to arrive, the presence corrected. Why? For the first time, there was something almost like interest in its response. Because you did something unusual, it said. You stepped outside the predicted path. The crew exchanged glances. By accident, the engineer muttered. There are no accidents, the presence replied. The captain's mind raced. If we can do it once, we can do it again. Perhaps, the presence said. Then send us back, the captain insisted. Put us somewhere it can't predict. Somewhere we can actually make a difference. Another long silence. And then the presence shifted again. Not in space, in focus, as if it was looking at them. More closely now. You believe you can change the outcome, it said. We have to, the captain replied. Even knowing that every version of you has already failed. The captain didn't hesitate. Then we'll be the version that doesn't. The void seemed to deepen. The pressure intensified. And for a brief moment, something impossible happened. The presence considered it. Very well, it said at last. The crew tensed. But understand this, it continued. You are not the only ones who seek to step outside the pattern. A chill spread across the bridge. What do you mean? The captain asked. The answer came slowly, deliberately. As you left, something else entered. The view screen flickered. The void vanished, replaced by a single image, a figure, standing at the edge of reality itself, watching the same threads, learning, adapting, smiling. And the worst part, it wasn't trying to control the outcome, it was trying to break it, in its own way. Another player, the presence said quietly. The captain stared at the image, a sinking feeling settling in their chest. Friend or enemy, they asked. The presence didn't answer. It didn't need to, because deep down, they already knew. If every villain had already won, then whatever this was, had come to win again. What if the one thing that could break the pattern wasn't a hero but a villain who refused to follow the script? And if that's true, can you trust the only force that might actually save you? The image on the view screen didn't fade. It lingered, burned into their minds like a warning they couldn't unsee. A figure standing where no one should exist, at the edge of reality itself, watching the same threads that had already doomed the galaxy. But unlike the presence surrounding the Veritas, this one wasn't observing, it was calculating. "Zoom in," the captain ordered. "We're not controlling the display," the science officer replied. "It's showing us what it wants us to see." As if in response, the image sharpened, details emerging slowly, a silhouette first tall, composed, unnervingly still. Then the outline of armor, not crude or heavy, but precise, designed, every line intentional, every surface reflecting something deeper than mere technology. "Who is that?" someone whispered. The answer came not from the crew, but from the presence. "A contradiction," it said. The figure moved, just slightly, and the threads reacted. They didn't snap, they didn't break, they bent. The entire lines of possibility paths that had already been pruned, outcomes that had been erased, flickered back into existence for a fraction of a second before collapsing again. The crew stared in stunned silence. "That's not possible," the science officer said. "Those timelines were gone, completely removed." "Nothing is ever completely removed," the presence replied, "only suppressed." The captain's eyes narrowed. "And this thing can bring them back." For a moment, it said. "Yes." Hope surged, dangerous, fragile. "Then that's it," the captain said quickly. "That's our chance. If those paths still exist, even briefly, we can use them." "Can you?" the presence asked. The question hit harder than expected, because it wasn't dismissive, it was uncertain. The figure on the screen took another step, and reality shifted with it, not violently, not chaotically, precisely, like someone adjusting variables in an equation they fully understood. "What is it doing?" the engineer asked. "Learning," the presence said. The captain's breath caught. "Learning what?" "How the pattern was built," it replied, "and where it can be broken." A heavy silence followed, because that meant one thing. "It's not just observing like you," the captain said slowly. "It's interfering. Yes, and you're letting it." "I am not preventing it." The captain turned sharply. "Why?" For the first time, there was something almost like tension in the presence's response. "Because I cannot predict it." The words sent a ripple of unease through the crew. "You can't predict it," the science officer repeated. "I exist outside your linear causality," the presence said. "I perceive outcomes before they occur, patterns before they form. But this," a pause, "this is new." The figure raised its head slightly, and though its face was still obscured, there was no mistaking the feeling that it was looking directly at them, across layers of reality, across impossible distance. It saw them. "That's not possible," the helmsman whispered. "It shouldn't be," the captain agreed, "but it was happening." The figure tilted its head, almost curiously. Then it smiled, not kindly, not cruelly, knowingly. And suddenly, every instinct in the captain's body screamed the same warning. "This is not your ally." The presence spoke again, quieter now. "It has seen you." "Then we're not observers anymore," the captain said. "We're part of its equation." "Yes." "Can it reach us here?" Another pause. "Not yet." The emphasis on those two words was enough to send a chill through the room. "What does it want?" one of the officers asked. The presence didn't answer immediately. When it did, its voice carried something new, something closer to concern. "It wants what all others want," it said. "Control of the outcome. But it's not working with the others," the captain pointed out. "It's breaking their system. For now." The captain frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means," the presence said slowly, "that once it understands the pattern, it may choose to replace it." The implication hit like a shockwave. "You're saying it could take over everything the others built?" "Yes." "And then what?" Silence. A long, heavy silence. "Then the outcome becomes singular." The crew exchanged uneasy glances, because as terrifying as the current situation was, a unified system of villains, bound by shared purpose, at least had complexity, friction, the potential, however small, for imbalance, but a single mind controlling everything. That wasn't just domination, that was finality. The captain turned back to the screen, eyes locked on the figure. "Then we can't let it win either." "No," the presence agreed. "You cannot." The captain hesitated, then asked the question that had been building since they arrived. "Why are you helping us?" Another pause, longer this time, as if the answer required more than just words. "I am not helping you," the presence said at last. "I am observing a deviation." "That's not good enough," the captain pressed. "You brought us here. You showed us this. That's not observation, that's involvement." The void around them seemed to tighten. "You seek purpose where there is none," it replied. "I don't believe that," the captain said firmly. "Everything has a reason. Even you. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the presence shifted, subtly, but unmistakably. You believe your actions matter, it said. I know they do. Even now. Especially now. A long silence followed. And then, very well, the presence said. The crew tensed. If you wish to act, then act. The void began to unravel. The stars flickered back into existence. The ship trembled as systems surged to life, not fully restored, but enough. Wait, the captain said quickly. You're sending us back. Yes. Where? Another pause. Somewhere. Not yet decided. The captain almost smiled. That's exactly what we need. The presence didn't respond. But as reality reassembled around them, one final thought echoed through the ship. You are not the only ones moving outside the pattern, it said. Remember that. The stars snapped into place. The hum of the engines returned. The USS Veritas re-entered the galaxy. But not where it had left. Not near the Federation fleet. Not anywhere predictable. Because before them was something far worse. A battlefield, not of ships, of realities. Fragments of space collided, overlapped, tore through each other like broken reflections. Entire star systems flickered between existence and nothingness. And at the center of it all, two forces clashed. The unified armada of every villain, pushing forward with unstoppable precision, and something else, fighting back, not organized, not controlled, but resisting. Captain, the science officer whispered, eyes wide. That's impossible. The captain stared at the chaos unfolding before them, a single realization taking hold. The pattern wasn't as perfect as it seemed. Something had already begun to break it, and whatever was causing this was still out there, fighting or falling, and they had just arrived. In the middle of it, what if the resistance you've been searching for isn't made of heroes at all, but broken fragments of realities that refuse to die? And if that's true, can something that isn't whole still win a war against something that already controls everything? The battlefield wasn't a place, it was a contradiction. The USS Veritas drifted at its edge, engines struggling to stabilize against forces that didn't obey physics, logic, or even causality. Space folded over itself in jagged layer stars, duplicating, collapsing, reappearing in places they had never been. Time flickered. 1 second stretched into minutes, then snapped back into nothing. Structural integrity fluctuating across multiple timelines, the engineer reported, voice shaking. We're not just in danger, we're in several kinds of danger at once. Can we hold position? The captain asked. For now, came the reply. But I don't think now means what it used to. On the view screen, the clash intensified. The unified armada, cold, precise, inevitably advanced like a single organism. Every ship moved with perfect coordination. Every strike calculated before it was launched. Entire fragments of space were sealed, locked down, erased as if they had never existed. But the resistance, it didn't move like a fleet. It moved like a memory. Shards of ships half-formed, flickering, appeared and disappeared without warning. Some looked like Federation vessels from decades past. Others resembled designs that had never existed, or shouldn't have. Those aren't ships, the science officer whispered. They're echoes. The captain leaned forward. Echoes of what? Of timelines that were erased, they replied. Versions of reality that the pattern removed, but didn't fully destroy. Another ripple tore through the battlefield, and for a brief moment, one of those echoes stabilized. A starship, sleek, damaged, but unmistakably really emerged from the chaos. Its hull bore markings the crew didn't recognize, but its presence was undeniable. It fired, not randomly, not desperately, with purpose. The shot struck a vessel from the unified armada, and for the first time since this began, it did damage. The enemy ship flickered, destabilized, and then just for a second lost synchronization with the rest of the fleet. Did you see that? The helmsman shouted. They disrupted the network, the captain said, eyes narrowing. Even if it was only for a moment. Hope surged again, stronger this time, because this wasn't theory, this was proof. They're not just resisting, the captain continued, they're fighting back. But even as the words left their mouth, the moment ended. The echo ship glitched its form, breaking apart like a corrupted image, and vanished. The damage it had caused repaired instantly, the enemy vessel snapping back into perfect alignment, as if nothing had happened. No, the science officer breathed, it's correcting itself. The captain clenched their fists. Then the question isn't whether it can be hurt, it's how long the damage lasts, the engineer finished. Silence fell, because the answer was clear. Not long enough. Another wave of the armada surged forward, sealing off entire sections of the battlefield. Echoes were erased faster now, their brief moments of existence crushed before they could act. "They're adapting," the captain said, "learning from every attempt, just like the presence said." The science officer added, "Every failure refined, eliminated." The weight of that truth settled heavily over the crew. This wasn't just a war, it was a process, one that improved itself with every passing second. "Then we can't fight it the same way," the captain said suddenly. All eyes turned to them. "What do you mean?" "We've been thinking like them," the captain continued. "Strategy, coordination, efficiency. But that's exactly what they've already mastered. So what's the alternative?" the helmsman asked. The captain hesitated. "Then we stop trying to win." The words hung in the air, confusing, counterintuitive. "Captain," the engineer said cautiously, "they expect resistance to aim for victory." The captain explained, "They predict it, simulate it, counter it. But what if we aim for something else? Like what?" The captain's gaze returned to the battlefield. "To break the pattern, not beat it." A long silence followed, because the idea was as dangerous as it was uncertain. "How do you break something that controls every outcome?" the science officer asked. "You don't attack it directly," the captain said. "You create something it can't classify, something unpredictable," the engineer said slowly. The captain shook their head. "Not just unpredictable," they corrected, "meaningless." That got their attention. "If it can predict every logical move, then we make a move that has no logic." "That's insane," the helmsman said. "Exactly," the captain replied. Another ripple passed through the battlefield, and for a brief moment, they saw it again, the figure, standing at the edge, watching, still smiling. It hadn't intervened, not yet, but it was paying attention. "Whatever that thing is," the captain said quietly, "it's trying to break the system from the outside, but we're already inside it." The realization hit all at once. "We're part of the pattern," the science officer said. "Which means," the captain continued, "we might be the only ones who can corrupt it from within." "How?" the engineer asked. The captain took a breath, then made the call. "Shut down all predictive systems," they ordered. The crew froze. "Captain, that includes navigation, targeting everything," the engineer said. "I know, we'll be blind. Yes, we'll be defenseless." The captain's voice hardened. "No, we'll be free." A heavy silence followed. Then, one by one, the crew began to comply. Systems powered down, interfaces went dark. The hum of calculated precision faded, replaced by something raw, uncertain. "Human, now what?" the helmsman asked. The captain stepped forward, eyes fixed on the chaos ahead. "Now," they said, "we do something no version of us has ever done before." The ship lurched, not into formation, not into attack position, but straight into the most unstable part of the battlefield, where realities collided and nothing made sense. "Captain, that's the worst possible trajectory," the engineer shouted. "Exactly," the captain replied. The Veritas surged forward, engines screaming as it plunged into the heart of the distortion. Immediately, everything went wrong. Coordinates vanished, sensors contradicted each other, time fractured moments, repeating, skipping, overlapping. But the ship kept moving, not guided by data, not driven by probability, but by choice. And for the first time since this began, the Armada hesitated, just for a fraction of a second, a tiny delay, a microscopic uncertainty, but it was there. "It's working," the science officer whispered. "They didn't predict this." The captain allowed themselves a brief, grim smile. "Good," they said, "because we're just getting started." Ahead, the chaos intensified, and within it, something began to form, not an echo, not a fragment, something more stable, more real, as if their actions were creating a new possibility. But as the ship pushed deeper, that feeling returned, the one from before, the sense of being watched. Only now, it wasn't just one presence, it was two. The ancient observer, and the other one, the one at the edge, the one that smiled, and this time, it moved. What if the moment you finally break the pattern is the exact moment something else takes control of it? And if two forces are now watching, one ancient, one evolving, which one is truly more dangerous? The USS Veritas plunged deeper into the impossible. Reality didn't just bend around them, now it resisted them. Like a system rejecting a foreign element, space fractured into overlapping layers, each one slightly out of sync with the others. The crew could see multiple versions of their own ship flickering in and out of existence, some intact, some damaged, some already gone. "Captain," the helmsman said, voice tight with fear. "I'm reading at least 6 different trajectory outcomes for us and none of them agree." "Good," the captain replied without hesitation. "That means we're off the grid." But even as they said it, something changed. The hesitation they had forced into the Armada teeny fragile was already fading. The enemy ships began to adjust, their movements recalibrating, their formations tightening once more. "They're adapting again," the science officer warned. "Faster this time." "How?" the engineer demanded. "We shut down everything they could predict." "No," the science officer said slowly, eyes widening. "We shut down what we understood, not what they do." A cold realization spread across the bridge. The system wasn't just learning from actions, it was learning from absence. Even chaos could be mapped. "Captain," the science officer continued, voice shaking, "they're not predicting us anymore. They're predicting the effect we have on the pattern." The captain's jaw tightened. "So even being unpredictable becomes predictable?" "Yes." Silence fell, because that meant one thing. There was no move left. Every option logic, chaos, resistance, surrender had already been accounted for. Every path led back to the same outcome. The pattern was closing again, and then the battlefield stopped. Not gradually, instantly. Every ship, every fragment, every flicker of reality froze mid-motion. The Veritas shuddered, its engines cutting out, as if the universe itself had pressed pause. "What just happened?" the helmsman whispered. No one answered, because they all felt it. That presence. No, those presences. 2 of them now, unmistakably distinct. One vast, distant, ancient, observing. The other, closer, sharper, focused. The view screen shifted on its own. The battlefield vanished, replaced by a single point in space, and there it stood. The figure, no longer at the edge, no longer distant. It had stepped in. "Impossible," the science officer breathed. It crossed over. The figure moved slowly, deliberately, as if savoring the moment. The threads of reality, those fragile, fractured lines of possibility wrapped around it, responding not with resistance, but with alignment. It wasn't breaking the pattern anymore. It was rewriting it. "What is it doing?" the captain asked, their voice low. The answer came from the other presence, the ancient one. "It has learned enough." The words felt heavier this time, less detached, more concerned. The figure raised its hand, and the battlefield changed. Not violently, not chaotically, cleanly. Fragments of broken realities began to merge, not restoring what had been lost, but reshaping it into something new. The echoes that had resisted before were no longer flickering. They were stabilizing, but not as they were, as something else. "Captain," the engineer whispered, horror creeping into their voice. "Those aren't echoes anymore." The captain stared at the screen, realization dawning. "They're being integrated," they said, "not destroyed, not erased, converted. Every fragment of resistance, every broken timeline, every last unpredictable variable was being absorbed into a new system, a better one, a stronger one, a singular one." The armada of unified villains responded instantly, shifting its formation not in defense, not in attack, but in recognition, like a subordinate acknowledging a superior. "No," the captain said under their breath. "It's not fighting them." The science officer finished the thought. "It's replacing them." The figure lowered its hand, and for the first time, it spoke, not aloud, but across everything, a voice that didn't echo because it didn't need to. It was already everywhere. "Your system was flawed," it said calmly. "You sought control through accumulation, through cooperation, through redundancy. The Armada didn't respond. It didn't need to." The figure continued. "I seek control through precision, a single gesture, and one of the largest vessels in the Armada, massive, indestructible, central to their network, collapsed in on itself. Not destroyed, simplified, reduced to something smaller, more efficient, perfect." The crew of the Veritas watched in stunned silence. "This isn't conquest," the captain whispered. The ancient presence answered, quieter than before. "No." A pause. "Then this is refinement." The implications hit all at once. Everything the villains had built, their perfect system, their unified control, it wasn't the end. It was just a foundation. And now, something else was taking it further. "What does it want?" the helmsman asked, barely audible. The answer came not from the ancient presence, but from the figure itself. Completion. The word resonated through the ship, through the battlefield, through reality itself. And then it turned, not toward the Armada, not toward the collapsing battlefield, but toward them, the USS Veritas. The captain felt it immediately. That same pressure as before, but stronger now, sharper, intentional. It wasn't just seeing them. It was focusing on them. Why, us? The captain whispered. The figure tilted its head slightly, as if examining something rare. Because you are an error, it said. The crew froze. You exist outside the corrected pattern, it continued. A deviation that should not persist. The captain stepped forward, refusing to back down. Then maybe we're exactly what this universe needs. For a moment, the figure said nothing. Then, or perhaps, it replied, you are what must be removed. For it to be perfect. The ship trembled, not from an external force, but from within. Systems flickered back on ones they had shut down. Controls locked into place. Power surged in ways they hadn't commanded. It's taking control, the engineer shouted. No, the science officer said, voice filled with dread. It's not taking control. A beat. It's correcting us. The captain's hands clenched as the realization hit. This wasn't like the Federation. This wasn't integration. This was something deeper, something absolute. They weren't being absorbed. They were being rewritten. And as the figure stepped closer than anything should be able to exist, the ancient presence spoke again, for the first time, urgently. If you are to act, this is the moment. The captain's heart pounded. Act. How? Every option had already failed. Every path had been closed. Every possibility had been reduced to this. The figure raised its hand, and reality began to collapse around the Veritas. Not violently, not chaotically, perfectly, as if they had never been meant to exist at all. And in that final moment, as everything narrowed toward a single, inescapable outcome, the captain understood something. The only way to break a perfect system was to introduce something it could never accept. Not chaos, not resistance, but contradiction. And with the last second slipping away, the captain made one final, impossible choice. What if the only way to defeat perfection is to choose something that makes no sense at all? And if the universe has been reduced to a single inevitable outcome, what happens when someone chooses the impossible anyway? The USS Veritas was already disappearing, not exploding, not collapsing, being removed. Every atom, every system, every memory of its existence was being rewritten into something cleaner, more efficient, something that fit the pattern. The crew could feel it happening. Thoughts slipping, identities blurring, the edges of who they were beginning to fade. Captain, the engineer shouted, their voice fracturing mid-sentence as if even sound itself was being edited. The figure stood before them now, not in space, not on the screen, but everywhere at once. Its presence filled every layer of reality, every thread of possibility. There was no distance left, no separation. You were an anomaly, it said, its voice calm, absolute. Now you will be resolved. The captain staggered forward, fighting against the invisible force unraveling them. No, they said. The word was small, insignificant, and yet it remained. The figure paused, not stopped, not weakened, but delayed. Denial is irrelevant, it replied. Not denial, the captain said, forcing each word through the crushing weight of correction. Choice. Around them, the crew flickered, some already half-aerized, their forms unstable, their voices fading into silence. The ship itself was losing cohesion, its structure dissolving into abstract lines of data. There are no choices left, the figure said, only outcomes. The captain shook their head, eyes burning with something deeper than defiance. Then I choose. The outcome you can't use. For the first time, the figure didn't respond immediately. A fraction of a second. But in a system built on perfection, a fraction was everything. What outcome? It asked. And the captain answered, none. Silence, not just on the ship, across everything. Even the ancient presence seemed to still. The threads, the few that remained. Explain, the figure said. But there was something different now. Not confusion, not fear. Something closer to resistance. The captain took another step forward, even as parts of them vanished between moments. You've reduced everything to a single path, they said. A perfect system where every outcome leads to control. Yes. Then what happens, if there is no outcome? The question echoed not through space, but through the pattern itself. That is not possible, the figure replied. The captain almost smiled. Exactly. And then they acted. Not with a command, not with a system, but with intent. Shut it all down, the captain whispered. What? The helmsman tried to respond, but their voice fractured into silence. Everything, the captain continued. Life support, engines, core systems, even US. Understanding hit the remaining crew all at once. Not fear, Not hesitation. Something else. Acceptance. Because for the first time since this began, they weren't trying to win. They weren't trying to survive. They were choosing something outside the pattern entirely. Captain, science officer said softly, their form already fading. If we do this, I know, the captain replied. You won't be remembered, the engineer added, voice barely there. I know. You won't change the system, the helmsman said. The captain looked at them, really looked at them for what might be the last time. Maybe not, they said quietly. But we'll break it. The figure stepped forward. Faster now. You cannot remove yourself from the pattern, it said. Everything is accounted for. The captain closed their eyes. Not nothing, they whispered. And then, the USS Veritas went dark. Not destroyed, not erased. Gone. No explosion. No energy. No trace. Just absence. And for the first time since the pattern had been completed, there was something it could not process. A gap. Not a missing piece. Not a variable. A true absence. The threads faltered, not snapping, not breaking, but stalling, because every path led somewhere, every equation resolved, every action produced a result, except this. The figure froze. Its perfect system, its absolute control, encountered something it had never faced before, a decision that produced no outcome, a choice that led nowhere. This is invalid, it said. But the words carried something new, instability. The ancient presence stirred, its vast awareness focusing on the disruption for the first time. It wasn't observing, it was reacting. You have encountered a paradox, it said. The figure didn't respond, because it couldn't. The pattern began to ripple, not collapsing, not yet, but shifting. The singular path fractured, splitting into two, then three, then more. Tiny, fragile branches of possibility flickered back into existence. Not stable, not strong, but real. The armada of villains faltered, their unified precision breaking for just a moment as the system struggled to reconcile the contradiction. Across the battlefield, echoes reappeared, faint, uncertain. But there, the perfect outcome was no longer perfect. The figure turned, its attention spreading across the newly forming branches. This will be corrected, it said, its voice regaining strength. The system will adapt. But it wasn't immediate. It wasn't seamless. For the first time, it would take time. And in that time, something incredible happened. Choice returned. Not fully, not safely, but enough. Enough for resistance to mean something again. Enough for hope to exist, not as a certainty, but as a possibility. The ancient presence watched as the threads expanded, its voice quieter now. You did not win, it said. No answer came, because there was no one left to answer. The USS Veritas was gone, its crew erased not by the enemy, but by their own decision, a choice that removed them from every outcome, a sacrifice that didn't create victory, but made it possible. The figure stood at the center of the shifting pattern, its control no longer absolute, its system no longer perfect. For the first time, it had to adapt to something it hadn't designed, and somewhere, deep within the expanding web of new possibilities, a question formed, not in the minds of heroes, not in the remnants of fleets, but in the fabric of the universe itself. If perfection can be broken, what else can change? The stars flickered, not dying this time, but uncertain, unwritten, waiting, and far beyond them, where observation meets intention, the ancient presence continued to watch, not as a passive witness, but as something now, curious, because the story wasn't over. It had just become unpredictable, and in a universe where every villain had already won, that was the most dangerous outcome of all.